Very good evening, Jai Shri Krishna Guru. Thank you for joining Sai Satcharitra Parayan. I hope you had a wonderful day today. Let us continue from where we begin. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Shri Saraswataya Namaha, Om Shri Guru Dattatreya Namaha, Om Shri Mahalakshmi Namaha, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Sai Satcharitra, the life and teachings of Shirdi Sai Baba. We continue from chapter 31. Importance of Sai Darshan. My obeisance to Shri Ganesh, to Shri Saraswati and Shri Guru Maharaj, to the family deity, to Shri Sita Ramachandra. My most humble obeisance, I bow in reverence to the most venerable Guru, Shri Sai Nath. We stopped at verse 98. Now we'll begin from verse 99. He lived at Bandra and felt like going there, so he planned to go from Pune up to Dadar by train. He went to the Pune station, and when it was time to buy a ticket, he went up to the ticket window when a miracle took place. A traveller who was a stranger to him and was dressed like a kunabi with a langot round the waist and a coarse blanket on his shoulder was seen standing near the window. So this is a story we are talking about Mankar, where this is regarding how Mankar saw Sai Samarth and he wanted to come and meet Sai Baba, and Baba is now making him come to Shirdi. Having bought a ticket for Dadar, the Kunabi turned back, and as his eyes met Balram's, he approached him. "Where are you going?" he asked, and when Balram said to Dadar, he asked, and when Balram said to Dadar, he gave the ticket to him, saying, "You take this now." I was to go there too, but have suddenly remembered that I have another important work here. Hence, I have cancelled my going. Mankar was only too happy to get the ticket so effortlessly, which even after spending one's money, it was difficult to obtain. So, to pay for the ticket, as Mankar took out the money from his pocket, suddenly the Kunabi forced his way through the crowd and disappeared. Where he slipped away, Mankar could not make out. Balram made great efforts to trace that Kunabi, but all in vain. Meanwhile, the train had also arrived. With no shoes, no chappal on the feet, a rag tied around his head, a blanket on his shoulder, and a loincloth round the waist, who was this Kunabi brother? The fare was by no means small, but that too he paid in cash out of his own pocket. Why, oh why, this burden of obligation on me? I cannot solve the puzzle. In outward appearance, a Kunabi, but so generous, so desireless at heart. Who could this Kunabi have been? It was something that remained unresolved to the end, leaving Mankar with many regrets. Full of amazement and with the hope of meeting the Kunabi, he remained silent. He remained standing near the door till the train was moving out. When the train did finally move out, knowing that all hope of finding him was at an end, he quickly caught the vertical rod of the door and jumped into the compartment. On the guard, there was an actual meeting with Sai, and so was here, but in a different way. The strange garb of the Kunabi created a disquiet in Mankar's mind. Later, this excellent devotee was totally attached to Sai and spent his days in Shirdi in steadfast devotion and faith, thereby experiencing fulfillment in life. Like a buzzing bee that hovers around the pollen on the lotus petals, Balramji was always hovering around Sai. With a murmur of Sai's name on his lips, he thus stayed on in Shirdi. With Baba's permission, he did sometimes take himself out of Shirdi in the company of another devotee, Muktaram. But Shirdi always remained the center to which he returned time and again. And it was in the sacred Shirdi that he finally gave up his mortal coil. Blessed was he who met Sai by virtue of his past merit, and being engrossed at his feet, had a fearless death. Blessed was Tatya Sahib Nulkar. Blessed too was Megha, the most excellent among the devotees. Both gave up the body, singing bhajans in Shirdi. How beautiful is it? So this is what Baba is saying, when the right moment arrives, he makes ways, means, provisions for you to visit him and get that grace. So this is how the gurus work. They can don and manifest in any garb, they can don any garb, they can manifest in any form and come and make your path clear so that you can meet them, so that your spiritual being that you need to attain can happen very smoothly. So if you see here, it's blessed, it's mentioned that blessed was Tatya Sahib Nulkar, blessed too was Megha, the most excellent among the devotees. Both gave up the body singing bhajan sincerity. This is the ultimate thing that you need to get. When you're taking the name of the divine and when you're singing the praises of the divine, that is when you leave this body. It is so beautifully mentioned how you can attain the divine till the end of your breath. So which means you have to only take the Naam of the Almighty Lord. That has to be constantly on your lips, in your heart and in your mind. That is how the purification of heart, your mind, surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Guru happens. Just see Baba's emphasis on the last rites being performed and his friendliness towards his devotees when Megha died. Megha had already accomplished the purpose of his human birth. When the villagers went to cremate him, accompanied by all the devotees, Baba also went to the cremation grounds and showered flowers on Megha. You know how much of a blessing that is from the Guru itself for you to get that, the cremation done, and he's coming and blessing you. That's the ultimate that anyone can attain. After the last rites were performed, there were tears in Baba's eyes too, like an ordinary, sorrowing man who is caught up in the web of Maya. Very lovingly, Baba covered the corpse with flowers by his own hands and turned back, bemoaning the loss in a sorrowful tone. We come across many saints who uplift the humanity, but how can one describe the greatness of Sai Baba? A ferocious animal like a tiger. Is he a jnani like man? But even he surrendered at Baba's feet. Such are the incomprehensible ways of Baba. Now listen attentively to a story in this context, and you will see Baba's all-pervasiveness, his equal concern for all. Once a miracle took place in Shirdi. Just even days before Baba's Mahasamadhi, a bullock cart came to the door. In it, at the back, was an enormous tiger of a frightful visage, who was tied firmly with thick iron chains round his neck. He had some ailment for which the Davashish had exhausted all the remedies. In the end, they thought that the best remedy would be a saint's darshan. There were 3 Davashish, and that tiger was their means of livelihood. They would hold shows moving from village to village and thus eke out a living. While wandering in that region, Baba's wonderful leelas came to their ears. So they thought, let us take his darshan and also take the tiger to that place. His feet are like Chintamani, the boon-granting gem. All the 8 siddhis, Ashtasiddhis, prostrate before him, and the 9 treasures roll out at his feet to take the holy water of his feet. So let us bow our heads at his feet and ask his blessings for the tiger. By the saint's benediction, we will all prosper. For this purpose, the Davashish took the tiger down from the cart at the door, holding fast to his chains, and stood waiting at the door. The tiger, as it was fierce, terrible and wild, to add to which he was afflicted with some disease. He was therefore most restless. All stood watching the spectacle. The Davashish then described to Baba in detail the condition of the tiger. After first taking his permission, they came back to the door. The chains were then drawn up tightly so that the tiger might not break loose and escape. And very carefully, they brought him in front of Sai. What a marvel, right? So sweet. Nearing the step, the tiger looked at Sai, that blazing radiance, and God knows why, but he was quite startled with it and bent down his head in great respect. Oh my God, that's so beautiful. Even animals, they understand the divine. With this, I will tell you a very beautiful story of my own Guruji. My Guruji can communicate with the entire universe. So once, some of his disciples were with him. They were visiting a park. And during that visit, he started talking to a bird. They were all watching there. And he had a 10 minutes communion or like conference of the birds. He was talking to this particular bird. The bird was making a very cute noise, and the its sound, how it, it's a way of it speaking. And my Guruji was exactly communicating. He was making it sound. He was trying to whistle and make some sounds. So both of them had this very beautiful conversation, and it was a very sweet sight. And at that time, I realized, or many of the students understands the greatness that he holds, how he kind of has communications with everyone around. Not just that, even the dogs, when they see my Guruji, they all will come running towards him. There is always a bond that they find with him. Then I understood that no matter which animal on planet Earth, but when they see the divine Lord Almighty, they can recognize the God. They can recognize these human beings as somebody very special. So they want to communicate. And similarly, there was a very beautiful instance. So during the same, while they were walking in that park, and few of my Guruji students, what happened was there was a peacock. So they were feeding the peacock. When it was my Guruji's turn to feed the peacock, when he held, the food, the grains in a small cup in the hand, the peacock started, biting his hand. It ferociously bit him so hard, and my Guruji started laughing. But when every other person fed the peacock, it would very quietly eat. But it's only when my Guruji fed the peacock would bite him. So this happened a couple of times, and we didn't know what that was, but it was a very cute instance and experience where we thought the peacock must have had some anger with my Guruji or the divine Lord Almighty. So the peacock is expressing in that manner. So it is communicating, it is trying to say my Guruji, and it is expressing its anger for whatever reason it was. It is the most cutest sight to watch that. There's a very beautiful picture of my Guruji, laughing away, holding this food grain in his hand, where the peacock is biting hard. It is amazing how the animals and the entire creatures, all the living, both the inanimate and inanimate beings on this planet Earth, communicate to these divine masters, because they're all knowing, they're all they're pervading everything in this universe. The entire creation, this universe, has emanated from them. So they can communicate with anything and anyone in this universe. So let's come back now. And oh, what a miracle! As their eyes met, the tiger gazed lovingly at Baba as he was coming up the step. At once he puffed up the tuft on his tail, struck the ground thrice with it, and surrendering the body at Sai's feet, impaired as he was, he fell down motionless. He gave only one terrifying roar and fell dead, there and then, in that instant. People gaped in wonder at such a death of the tiger. The Devashish looked sad, and yet they were happy too, that the ailing animal, on the point of death, was thus liberated. Great indeed is the merit for death before the eyes of sadhus and saints. Then be it a worm, an insect, or a tiger, he becomes free at once from all his sins. There must have been some debt of the last birth which the tiger had now repaid, thus becoming free from it. At Sai's feet, he gave up the body. The workings of destiny are truly inconceivable. The creature who dies with his head on a saint's feet is at once uplifted. This is his real gain in this birth. Unless he was so very fortunate, is it possible that a creature will give up his physical body right in front of a saint's eyes and be liberated instantly? To renounce the body in front of a sadhu is as great a happiness as that the poison should be transformed into nectar on drinking it. Of such a death, there is neither joy nor sorrow. Blessed is the body of that creature who dies at the feet of the saint, for it becomes an offering to Lord Shri Krishna, and there is no rebirth after that. How beautiful! You attain the divine Lord Almighty, Lord Shri Krishna himself. Death in front of the saints is no death, but the blissful happiness of Vaikuntha. You become one with them, you merge in them. He has conquered the kingdom of death and is free from the sorrows of worldly life. Those who give up the body in front of saints are not reborn, for that itself is the expiation of their sins, and they attain moksha. Leaving the mortal frame while gazing at the saint from head to toenails, can this be called death? No, indeed, it is truly one's upliftment alone. Considering the event as predestined, maybe he was some meritorious soul who, in flaunting his knowledge, had insulted a Hari Bhakta, a devotee of God, and as a result of his curse was born into this cruel genre. But by a mitigation of the curse by the same Haribhakta had come to the feet of a saint. Truly, the doings of these devotees are most remarkable. I feel that because of the mitigation of the curse, he had Sai's darshan, which burnt up all his sins, snapped the bondage, and put an end to his suffering. As a result, he was automatically uplifted. Without a perfect good fortune, how can death come in front of a saint? As for the tiger, his threefold afflictions, the Tribhutis and the three gunas, were all destroyed, and he became one with the Supreme. Absolutely. To die in the presence of the saint itself is a great boon. It's not in everybody's, everybody's, we say, destiny. It is not in everybody's destiny. You must have some great virtues. You must have some great merits earned to have this kind of a death. So whether it is this tiger or the other people who had died in presence of Baba, and Baba himself went and did the last rites, is a great boon. So you're attaining the Lord Almighty, Lord Shri Krishna himself in that one instance. How beautiful is it? And they died doing, singing the bhajans of the divine. So that is how you also have to be programmed, which means you have to practice. Sadhana is a must. To always keep taking the name of the God. Our mind shouldn't dwell in any other object. If it dwells in even any other object, then you incur karma. This is a very important lesson. But it is not so easy to attain. Why? Because we have to practice it. This morning my Guruji was giving a very important lesson. And in that he mentioned that, to go into tamas is very easy. To go downwards is very easy, but to rise above, to get into sattva is the most difficult thing to do, which means you need to have extraordinary effort. Your mind is going to drag you down, but you have to uplift yourself, and that is self-effort, and without that, you cannot progress. See, he said these demons, the mind, in the form of some object, it will latch on. The mind itself is unreal. And he said this, it is a Maya itself. And all these objects that it brings in front of you and creates all sorts of, ill feeling, the mean things in the mind, the anger, all those different negative feelings it harbors, it's only putting you down. Why? Because these demons don't want you to progress and become divine. So it is your effort to uplift yourself. Please remember that your Guruji's grace is always on your head. The Lord Almighty's grace is always there. He's giving you the hand. You just have to catch it and walk ahead. But you have to make that effort by overcoming those obstacles, by fighting those demons. Put self-effort. Overcome them. Fight. You might fall 10 times, but the next time you have to get up and walk again. You have to run. You have to go ahead. My Guruji was telling that, one wrong thing. See, because you must have taken 100 steps, you have already climbed up. But from there, you make one mistake, you will fall down, come straight down. And after that, you have to again do 100 good, and you have to put extraordinary effort to climb that path all over again. So for those who are already up there, the fall is very hard, and it's even more difficult to climb up again. But somebody who's down there, for them it's just a climb, right? So this is what he said as part of spirituality. When you have reached somewhere, or you are already the good being, why do you want to do something bad to come down further? So keep doing good. But these tests are going to come because you have to get purified. It doesn't stop, saying that you have reached somewhere. You have to go deeper. You have to experience these lessons. You have to practically live it. Till you don't experience, how can you attain spiritual being? This is what my Guruji taught today from Samarth Ram Das, the Das Bodh. scripture where Samat Ramdas Maharaj is saying that you need to get a direct experiences. Till you don't experience that lesson, till you don't have an experience and understanding of that lessons yourself, there cannot be any spiritual wheel. In this way, by virtue of the previous karma, his association with the wicked body was severed. His connection with the iron chains that had bound him was broken. Such is the divine law. Where else can you find the progression to upliftment except at the feet of the sadhus and saints? And when the tiger attained that, the Devashis were naturally pleased at heart. That tiger was their means of livelihood. He was their bread and butter. So it was natural that their faces should become sad when the tiger died. They then asked Maharaj, what should be done now? How should he be buried? Please give him, with your own hands, a good passage after death. Maharaj said, do not grieve, his end was to be here. Moreover, he too was meritorious, that he attained such great happiness. Beyond the Takya, there is a Shiva temple. Carry him there and perform his burial rites near the Nandi. If you bury him there, he will also have a good passage, and at your hands he will be freed from his debt and from bondage. He remained in your bondage until today, only to repay your debt, being your debtor of the last birth. The Devashish then lifted him up and went near the temple. He was buried in a ditch at the back of the Nandi. Oh, what a miracle it was to see the tiger dead in an instant. And had the incident ended at this point, it would soon have been forgotten. But exactly on the 7th day from it, Baba too left his mortal body on the ground. Hence it is that the memory of this incident surges up in the mind again and again. The next chapter is even more interesting. Baba describes his Guru's fond admiration and affection, how he satisfied the keen desire of Gokhale Bai by bestowing favor upon her. Hemad humbly surrenders to Sainath. Listen to how Baba won his Guru's grace by being suspended upside down in a well at the hands of his Guru. This is the most interesting chapter. So let's begin chapter 32, the greatness of the Guru. My obeisance to, start this chapter. It was narrated in the last chapter how Vijayanand attained Nirvana. How Balakram also merged into the blissful self at Sai's feet. Similarly, how Tatya Sahib Nulkar and Megha, the devotee most excellent and of the highest degree, gave up the body before Sai's eyes. The listeners, however, have listened in detail to even a greater marvel than all this, the manner of death of a wild, ferocious animal like a tiger. Now, in this present chapter, I shall narrate an interesting account as described in Baba's own words, which will benefit the listeners greatly. Once, while in the forest, Baba had Guru Darshan quite unexpectedly. Listen attentively to the marvelous workings of the Guru. How can a lowly creature like me describe adequately the marvel of a tale that brings devotion, faith and liberation, and which came straight out of Sai's mouth? Similarly, when a lady wished to have Baba's darshan to stay in Shirdi for 3 days with a vow to observe a strict fast, how he contrived a situation whereby he made her break her resolve and got her to prepare Puran Polis, most delicious and appetizing. Not only did he get the polis prepared by her, but made her eat them to her heart's content and impressed upon her mind how the fulfillment in wearing out one's body in the cause of others is truly great. How there is far greater merit in so doing rather than in observing fasts. And this was fixed in her mind in such a way that she would never forget it. Similarly, how he who is fond of the spiritual path should do sadhana with a firm resolve and venture upon that difficult path to attain the highest and lasting good. A series of stories in this connection, which are sweeter than nectar itself, will generate a loving devotion in the listener's heart and will end all their sorrows. From here onwards, we'll follow a sweet tale which will satisfy the fond desire of those who wish to listen, will bring a blissful joy to the narrator and his listeners, and will bring a sense of fulfillment to all those who are listening. Sai will get his extraordinary and loving tale narrated through me. while I, a foolish, lowly creature, will experience joy and admiration at every step as I write it. As sins by Ganga Darshan, or suffering by the moon's darshan, are allayed, so will the words from Sai's mouth destroy all sins and sufferings. Now listen respectfully, O listeners, to the description that came from Maharaj Sai's own mouth as to how he had the darshan of his own Guru. Even if Vedas and Vedangas are studied thoroughly and the Shruti Shastras is read repeatedly, there is no true knowledge without the Guru's grace. All other efforts are a futile exertion. This extensively spread tree of worldly life, first unmanifest but later manifest and created by the eyes, is both filled with the pain of birth and death and is destructible. It can cut down and is destructible, hence it is called a tree. It is the unmanifest worldly life that assumed a form and became manifest. Therefore, it is compared to a tree. This visible, destructible tree of life, which has its roots above and its expanse of innumerable branches, is beyond all imagination. From one moment to another, it continues to spread, branching off further and further. From a distance, it looks charming, but once embraced, it reveals nothing but thorns all over. It is as sapless as a stump of a banana plant, like a mirage or the Gandharvanagar that fastens those who resort to it with the water of ardent desires and cravings. Such is this great outwardly attractive tree. I'm sure you, in Bhagavad Gita, if you listen, you should listen to my Guruji's satsang. In this tree of life is mentioned, and how it spreads its branches out, and how it keeps creating, and how the worldly life bondage continues, and how you keep, taking birth and death. How is the cycle of rebirth happens, and what should you do to overcome this? This is exactly what Lord Sri Krishna has imparted in Bhagavad Gita. And if you would like to learn more in depth, please go listen to it. My Guruji has given an in-depth explanation how to overcome this. Arising out of karma of wrong, misguided wishes and born from the unmanifest seed, though it is without any real existence, it appears every moment to be of a different nature. Disastrous by its very nature, it is born of ignorance and surrounded by the water of intense desire and cravings that collects around it. This tree of life, which has the retinue of wife, sons, wealth, grain, and etc., gains a foothold because of its identification in men's minds with the material and the physical, and it exists only to support this. Absolutely. So we identify with this body. The body is the tree on which the soul is resting. The bird is that soul. So we are constantly lost in building this family, right? I am the body, I am the mind, I am senses, I am attached to my family, wife, husband, children, office, friends, family, you name it, everything, colleagues, work, money, you're running after endless desires. All these things binds you, and you are, creating so many karmas that you don't even know the complication, the mesh, it's like a web, and you get entangled into the karma, which is like a web, and you can't even know where it is beginning and where it is ending. You have created that whole mesh for yourself. So you need to get out. The only way to get out is when you meet your guru. And when your guru, the guru finds you. It's not you find your guru, but you need to always seek within. I keep saying this. The real master will find you when three things comes together. We have done this in the previous chapter, but I will repeat it again. One is you need to have a human birth. Number two is you need to have the intense desire to know who truly I am, and you must be frustrated with the material worldly life. Number three is the grace of the God has to be dawn on you. When three things comes together, the guru will come in your life. The guru will find you, and then you will be drawn towards him. And when he draws you towards him, then he will put you on the path, evaluating whatever that is right for you, and then he will make you progress on that path. And once he imparts this knowledge, it is your responsibility that you need to put self-effort to do sadhana, to practice and to imbibe that knowledge and live that knowledge practically and get the experience, so that you can redeem yourself from the karmas and become free from bondage of material worldly existence. There are very important lesson in which my Guruji has taught. How do you attain Lord Shri Krishna, right? It's only through love and devotion, the simplest path. But in that also, you have to put effort. Love and devotion doesn't come so easily because you have to live most important lessons, which is you have to become dispassionate. Second one is you have to become detached. Third one is you need to have discrimination. The discrimination knowledge is this. One is this entire universe, whatever is happening around you is unreal. And you need to be able to see God in everything. So this is easy said than done. I'll tell you why. Many a time, if somebody is talking to you and if they say something nice about you, we get elated. Or when somebody says all the bad things about you, we get very angry. And when we get angry, that memory, whatever the bad incident is in your mind, see, more than the good, you'll dwell on the bad. Your mind latches onto that and it is now part of your memory. Now, whenever your mind is angry or this person's name comes in front of you, the memory, the mind will throw that particular instance, which means you're carrying with it. And my Guruji gave a very important lesson. There's a very beautiful stories he taught. How do you overcome this? He said, there is a saint and his disciple walking along. And while they are crossing the river, there is this beautiful lady. She requests the saint, can you please help me cross across that river? So the saint carries this woman on her shoulder. And then he leaves her on the shore and then continues to walking. When after some time, the disciple says to his guru, he says, I'm sure it must have been wonderful carrying that lady on your shoulder. I'm sure it was a great feeling, right? So, you know what the guru says? I left her long ago. It is you who are carrying with you. It's like that. So why do we have to carry this in our mind? Why do we create memories? Because we get attached to what somebody is saying, good or bad, sad, ugly, happy, sad, beautiful, ugly. All these things are the pairs of opposite. Lord Shri Krishna in Bhagavad Gita has very beautifully explained. Don't get swayed between the pairs of opposites. You need to practice equanimity of mind. See, just because I am doing the satsangs here and explaining this doesn't mean I have attained that spiritual wheel myself. Yes, my mind also do come constantly. So it is a practice. It is not overnight. I can be 12 years. It doesn't mean you need to have 12 more lives to evolve to that highest spiritual being. It is not such an easy thing. Spirituality is not a joke. It's not that you're in spiritual for 12 years means you have done something great. No, you have to be for 12 million lives also you have to continue to eternity. Spirituality is endless. That is why I keep saying Lord Shri Krishna is Athanga Sagar. He's a limitless ocean. You cannot measure the breadth and depth of that knowledge or what you can attain as part of a spiritual being. To become that, you have to wear yourself out. And this is not going to come easy. Every single day there are going to be tests. I go through this myself. My mind comes even more stronger. And at that time, the application is what needs to stand. And sometimes, no, many times I fail. And my Guruji will remind me the same lessons over and over and again. And he taught this beautiful lesson saying, why are you carrying it in your mind? That why I have to left that woman long ago? It's you who are carrying it. It's like that. The moral of that lesson is this. Why do we carry all those things, whatever happens around us? Everything that is happening around us is Maya. You need to understand this. And this is where we fail. We get so lost in the Maya. You know what my Guruji teaches? The reason why he's telling that you have to be your good self and to be on the path of Sattva means no matter how somebody behaves to you, you need to still be very nice to them. Actually, he says this, you are on spiritual, especially to me. This is the most important lesson for me that he says you need to practice. If you need to get there, that doesn't mean it's only for me, but for everybody else as well. He says this, we have to always be our good self. Why should we be mean to anybody? Why have to we say bad things about somebody? Everybody has a nature. They are all bound. Many a time people are ignorant. Even I am ignorant in a lot of things. So my Guruji forgives my ignorance too, and continues to impart the same knowledge. He'll drill down the same knowledge over and over and over again. There is nothing more to teach. The most important one word that if we live, we can become the highest spiritual being is be our good self. We don't have to be bad to anybody. We don't have to say bad things to anybody or anyone, right? Yes, he'll also tell me, don't point out people's mistake. They do because they don't know. You don't have to point out. Similarly, he says this to me. You have to overcome your mind. Why are you carrying some of those things in your mind? Like you're like that boy who's still carrying in his mind. Don't become that. Similar, there is another beautiful story by Buddha, Lord Buddha. Buddha and his disciples were going, and one person comes and he abuses Buddha. He is giving him galis, meaning very abusive, and he says all sorts of bad things to Buddha. And finally, when this man, stopped, Buddha asked him, "Have you finished?" And then he continued walking. But his student, he's saying, "How can you take something like this? This man is talking all bad things and he said so many bad things about you. Why are you taking it?" And then Buddha says to his disciple, "I did not hear. Did you hear? Then you go fight with him." So that is the ability to control your mind. So Buddha means that he's free from everything. He's enlightened. Enlightened is what? You have attained freedom from swaying. You're attained freedom from what people say, what people don't say. Why are you even paying attention to people? Why should anything matter to you in your life? We are here to be good. We are here to do good. That is all. Our job is to focusing on our own spiritual being. See, only you like example, I can only focus on my own spiritual being, but I cannot do something for you. So I have to put my own effort to overcoming my tendencies, my nature, or whatever the challenges that I have. My Guruji has always said, between you and me, there is only your mind. So it is the mind we have to conquer. And as we evolve on the path, as you go higher and higher, the obstacles are many more. Because from there, the fall can come very fast. And there will be too many obstacles because the demons, the deities within you, there's all the other things around you, don't want you to progress ahead. So why do you want to cut your own legs? So don't do this. And in this story, now when we are studying about Sai Baba's Gurudev, it's a very, very important lesson. And Baba is going to talk how the Guru is going to teach you, what all the Guru puts you through. You know why? Because he wants the perfect student. He wants his student to be perfect. That spiritual knowledge has to be embedded so firmly that come what may, you become that mountain. Nothing can shake you and nothing can break you. So he will put you, he's going to put you through all of these things day in and day out. The same lesson is going to come and you have to evolve in that. So do not get tainted by what people say, how they say. It doesn't matter. Everybody is allowed to say what they want. But the most important thing my Guruji teaches is we all have to be our good self. Being good self means you don't have to react. You don't have to carry twice if somebody is doing bad. My Guruji has said, he teaches one very important lesson and he's always said this. Even somebody is doing bad to you, you should do good to them. That is what being godly means. And here Baba is also saying, the very important lesson that he's teaching one of, the devotees. The fulfillment in wearing out one's body in the cause of others is truly great. This is what spirituality means. We have to burn ourselves and spread the fragrance of goodness in everybody. That is what it means. Today, before we did the puja, I just kept the incense stick ready there. At that time, my Guruji said, you have to become this incense stick where it burns itself out and gives the fragrance, most beautiful fragrance. Similarly is this body. We are here to serve this entire universe, to serve the God, Lord Almighty's purpose. So we have to be the best in that job. So let me come back. How there is far greater merit in doing so rather than in observing fast. And this was fixed in her mind in such a way that she would never forget it. Similarly, how he who is fond of the spiritual path should do sadhana with a firm resolve and venture upon the difficult path to attain the highest and the lasting good. So it is a difficult path. It is not easy. A series of stories in this connection, which are sweeter than nectar itself, will generate a loving devotion in the listeners' hearts and will end all their sorrows. From here onwards, will follow a sweet tale which will satisfy the fond desire of those who wish to listen, will bring a blissful joy to the narrator and his listeners, and will bring a sense of fulfillment to all those who are listening. Sai will get this extraordinary and loving tale narrated through me, while I, a foolish, lowly creature, will experience joy and admiration at every step as I write. As sins by Ganga Darshan or sufferings by the Moon Darshan are allayed, so will the words from Sai's mouth destroy all sins and sufferings. Now listen respectfully, O listeners, to the description that came from Maharaja Sai's own mouth as to how he had the darshan of his own Guru. Even if Vedas and Vedangas are studied thoroughly and Shruti Shastras is read repeatedly, there is no true knowledge without the Guru's grace. All other efforts are a futile exertion. This extensively spread tree of worldly life, first unmanifest but later manifest and created by the eyes, is both filled with the pain of birth and death and is destructible. It can be cut down and is destructible, hence it is called a tree. It is the unmanifest worldly life that assumed a form and became manifest. Therefore, it is compared to a tree. I think I finished this, so let me continue from where I stopped. Arising out of the karma of wrong, misguided wishes and born from the unmanifest seed, though it is without any real existence, it appears every moment to be of a different nature. Disastrous by its very nature, it is born of ignorance and is surrounded by the water of intense desires and cravings that collects around it. This tree of life, which has the retinue of wife, sons, wealth, grain, etc., gains a foothold because of its identification in men's minds with the material and the physical, and it exists only to support this. This tree, whose branches are the numerous creatures of the two sexes and which is restrained by its descending shoots of karma, desires, etc., flourishes in its entirety. Covered closely with the leaves of Shrutis, Smriti, etc., blooming with the newly sprouted tender leaves of speech, touch, etc., filled with the luxuriant blossoms of the rites and rituals of yajna, dan, etc. This tree is endowed with the succulent juices of the pairs of opposites. I think I've already explained this. Unlimited is its fruit, and it has become the means of livelihood for one and all. The regions of the earth, that of the antariksha or sky, etc. None of these are without this tree. Sometimes dance and song and instrumental music, sometimes play, laughter, tears. Such is this eternal people tree, always with its head downwards, manifest in this illusory universe of all existence born of Maya. This tree is destroyed by the weapon of detachment or renunciation. Till you do not have detachment, till you cannot renunciate, you cannot cut asunder this ignorance that is born of this attachment and to the worldly life existence. Know its pure origins, that is good, virtuous disposition is in its very nature light itself. This Brahman, which is truth, sustains all. The world is as illusory as a dream, which has neither beginning nor end and is without support. How can it sustain itself in such a position? That for which great efforts are made by the detached, to which the saints are always attached, and which the seekers are constantly in search of, and the sadhakas are most desirous of. This is so beautifully said. I will read this again for you. That for which great efforts are made by the detached. So most important, detachment, to which the saints are always attached. The saints are one with that. They are the only attachment the saints have. They are the Parabrahman themselves. And which the seekers are constantly in search of. The seekers, those who are this path, they are the seekers. And the sadhakas are most desirous of. One who is doing this, the sadhaka, the sadhana, right? You are a sadhak, you're on the path of spiritual journey, and you're doing those sadhana so that you can attain that. That is more, so the sadhaka is most desirous of. That is what you want to desire, to attain that spiritual wheel, the highest wheel. When one wishes to attain that, he should surrender to the saints and listen to whatever they say, totally eschewing all doubts and misconceptions. Most important lesson here. When one wishes to attain that highest spiritual wheel, God realization, moksha, liberation, whatever name you want to call it. He should surrender to the saints. You have to surrender completely. Your mind, body, senses, everything have to be surrendered unto the lotus feet of your master. And listen to whatever they say, totally eschewing all doubts and misconceptions. You have to give up all doubts and misconceptions. You have to eschew, means you have to do manan. Every word that your Guruji instructs you, you have to do manan, contemplate on it, meditate on it, and you have to apply it. See, it is already mentioned, spiritual path is very, very difficult. It is not so easy. People think it's an easy thing, it is not. Not even just because I say all the beautiful stories. I'm not talking about how difficult, what are the things that I go through. It's not easy. Day in and day out, I go through my own tests. You think it is so easy? It is not. You have to go through your tests. Tests are going to come dime a dozen. And if I make one mistake, like my Guruji says, you will fall, you will come down 100 steps below. And then to climb that, it's going to be, you have to put extraordinary effort. You have to put double the effort, triple the effort. That's how it is. So it's easy said than done. Spirituality is not a joke. And here, Baba is explaining very beautifully how difficult this is. But this is what you have to aspire to attain. Having this human birth, it is a boon. So you already have that. So seek the grace of the God and then have this intense desire to have the God realization so that you can redeem yourself from the material worldly bondage and the the cycle of birth and death. Bundling up all the thoughts in the mind, banishing from it all ingenuity and false wisdom, severing the ties of Maya and attachment, he should concentrate on the feet of the Guru. Oh my God, this is most important. Dhyana Moolam Gurur Murti, Puja Moolam Gurur Padam, Mantra Moolam Gurur Vakyam, Moksha Moolam Gurur Krupam. So Dhyan, and here also is saying, concentrate on the feet of the Guru. You have to do dhyan on the feet of the Guru. It is extremely important. That is the only way for you to sever yourself from severing the ties of Maya. Otherwise you cannot. You have to cut asunder by the grace when you concentrate and meditate upon the lotus feet of your Guru. That is how you can do it, and you can overcome the attachment, because your attachment then becomes the Parabrahman. You get attached to him. That is why we say Guru Sakshat Parabrahman. The Parabrahma is the Guru himself. That is why Guru is the doorway to God. If the Guru is pleased, then all gods are pleased. So never make your Guru ever get angry with you. But the Maya is always going to come and instigate you against your master. That is ever going to happen. So you will get very angry with your master. Please know that that is your downfall. That is what the deities, the demigods and everybody around you wants in this world. And this Maya is unreal. So don't fall for it. Do not go by what others say, how others do, and don't get distracted by it. Your spiritual will should be your only goal in your life. And when God has given you that opportunity, don't ruin it with your own hands. Shake off the misleading doubts, or else they will obstruct your path, trample under your feet all conceit. Only then will you reach the shore beyond. Absolutely. And now listen to a sweet tale in this connection which Baba had himself narrated. By doing so, you will experience blissful happiness as you drink this nectar of the Guru's words. Once, the four of us, having already read the Pothis and Puranas and gained knowledge, began a debate about Brahman, taking up the maxim from the Gita that one must uplift himself by his own effort. Gita chapter 6 verse 5. One of us contended that it is most improper to depend upon anyone else for it. To him, another replied, only he is truly the blessed one whose mind is fully under his control. Therefore, one should always be free from doubts, resolves, etc., knowing that there is nothing in the world except one's own self. Everything that is subject to change is transient. What is permanent is that which does not change. Therefore, always think in terms of permanent and transitory, said the third. The fourth one did not approve of bookish learning, but believed in conducting oneself in conformity with the Shastras and offering oneself totally body, speech, the five vital layers at the Guru's feet. See, it's very important. Our Shastras and Shrutis, everything says that without a Guru, you can never attain your spiritual being. Guru is the doorway to God. So you have to find the Guru. So Baba and three others here are going in search of a Guru. So each one had their own belief. So let us see what happens. A firmly rooted, unwavering faith is necessary to believe that the Guru is God Himself, who pervades this entire animate and inanimate universe, from inside and outside, absolutely. Those merely well versed in the Shastras, those who are solely intellectual, or those who are only inquisitive, can never even dream of acquiring true knowledge. What is needed here is a pure, devout, faithful devotee. Thus, we, the four intelligent men, set out in search of something, intending to make that discovery. That the discovery should be made independently on their own, with a mind free of all worry. Such was the intention in the minds of the three. But while wandering freely in the forest, we met a Vanajari on the way who asked us, "The heat of the sun is intense. For what purpose are you going and where?" We replied, "We are going to search the forest and its interior." The Vanajari asked us, "What are you searching for?" We said in reply, "It is not good to talk about what is a secret." But seeing our frantic, hurried running hither and thither, the heart of that Vanajari was moved to pity. He said, "The forest is difficult of access. Unless you know it well, you should not wander in it at will. To roam such forests, you should always have a guide with you. At this high noon, why do you undertake this venture? Why all this arduous effort? Do not tell me your secret mission. Do not tell me your secret mission, if you like, but at least sit down and have a piece of bhakri." Bhakri means bread. "Drink some water and then go. Have some patience in your heart." Although he urged us so sincerely, we proceeded on our way without heeding him and scorned at his request. But later on the way we found ourselves completely exhausted. See, Baba says, most important in Marathi, there is a very nice saying. It said, "Ati potoba mag vitoba," means first you have to fill your stomach. First you need to have food. You have to eat well. Your stomach has to be full. And then you have to go and search for God. Because on empty stomach, you can never find God. You know why? Baba will very beautifully explain in one of the chapters that when you search anything on an empty stomach, your mind is going to be lost in your saying that I'm feeling hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm exhausted, like exactly what they were saying. And then you cannot seek God. Your mind is going to be lost in the food, thinking that you're tired, you're hungry. So that is why we say first you need to eat well and then go and serve the Lord. That is when you can find God. But without eating, on empty stomach, you don't find God. Oh, but clever as we all are, we can easily find our way. Where is the need for a guide? Such was our secret pride. But the forest was extensive and thickly wooded, with tall, enormous trees where the sun's rays could not penetrate at all. How could one find one's way there? We lost our bearings completely, wandering here and there fruitlessly. But great was our good fortune that we came back to the same spot from where we had started. Fate sent us back the way we had come, and once again we went the same Vanajari. "Looks like you took the wrong path. Sometimes the ingenuity of mind does not help. The task may be big or small, but someone has to point out the way." See, the Guru is the one who points out. He is the guide. That is why we say you need a guide to go ahead. Why? Because the Guru has already journeyed that path. Only the Guru knows how to attain God, because the Guru himself is God Almighty. The task may be big or small, but someone has to point out the way. And on an empty stomach, nothing is discovered. Even the intellect wanders in bewilderment. So don't use your ingenuity, right? Don't bring your mind. This is a very important lesson. Unless it is the plan of the Almighty, you will meet no one on the way. So never turn your back on food offered. Very important. Never push away a platter of food. Food is very important because they are, everybody seeks food. So never disregard food. You have to always respect food. When someone offers you a piece of bread, requesting to eat it, take his words to be good omen, which will remove all obstacles to your work. Now have some repast and keep a little patience in your heart. But such good counsel did not appeal to the three of them. And once again, they set out without eating anything. I was hungry, my throat was parched with thirst. Moreover, I was filled with fond admiration for the remarkable love and concern of that Vanjari, that is Baba. We, the learned, the scholarly, knew no kindness or nor piety. Being rich but miserly, nobody bothered to shoo away the crow with the unwashed hand. But this Vanjari, without any learning or authority, of a lower varna and a Vanjari by caste, and yet how much natural affection he had in his heart, that he should say, eat some bread and vegetable. So that is the goodness. The great masters are like this. And how you find the Guru is very important. The Guru is finding you. If you see here this whole story, the Guru finds you and then asks, what are you doing? See, he's all knowing. He knows what is there in their heart. But only the ones who have to be with the Guru will pull you to his side, and you will not leave the place because you will already have got attracted. The Guru is like a magic. He's that magnet. And when the moment you're that metal, he'll go stick to him, right? So that attraction will come immediately like that. It's indescribable, but it happens to everyone in their own way. So what is my attraction is very unique to me versus what is your attraction will be very unique to you. And that is not comparable. And what I see is not what you will see. That is how God is experienced. To each his own. And as is your faith, so are your experiences as well. So there's no point in comparing who is high, who is low, nothing like that. Everybody's journey is unique and in his own individual way. So you can't compare someone's journey with yours. No two people are the same. He who loves in this way without any expectation, only he is a true jnani. And I felt to show him respect is the most unique way of gaining supreme knowledge. Therefore, with great respect, I ate the quarter piece of bread that the Vanjari gave me and drank some water. And lo, what a wonderful thing happened. Quite unexpectedly, Guru Raj appeared and said to us, why all the arguments and debate? I then related to him everything from the beginning to end. And suddenly that eureka moment happens. And then you understand, oh my God, this is my Guru. Will you come with me? I shall immediately find for you what you are searching. But only he who respects my word will achieve his purpose. Respecting the word of the Guru is very important. In Guru Granth Sahib Ji it is said, the word of your Guru is the gospel truth. And the word of the Guru is what? That's why in Guru Granth Sahib Ji they say Guru Bani, the word of the Guru. That is the truth. So that is the God itself. So you have to respect the words of your Guru. Anything that your Guru says, you just have to obey. My Guruji will say, if my Guruji says something, that is his Gurudev, I'll say, Sir Akunte. Means with that respect, I will follow that command. Will not argue like you people do. So when I have argued with my Guruji, and I do that because the mind comes in, and this is something we all have to fight and overcome. Everybody has their own challenge. So it doesn't mean what I go through is what somebody is going to go through. My nature, my challenges, my tendencies are independent to me. And that is something I will have to overcome. That is, I have to battle in my own life. So my Guruji says, you have to obey your Guru's words. Respect, honoring him is extremely important. And that is when you will attain that spiritual will, not otherwise. Your Gurudev has to be pleased with you. If he is not pleased with you, you are not going to get anything. Forget about God. You are not even going to get anything in this world. All you will be lost in this Maya. So others did not agree. But I acquiesced with great respect. All others then went away and Guru Raya took me with him. He took me to a well, tied a rope to both my legs and lowered me in the well in a feet up, head down position. Guru Raya suspended me in the well in such a way that the hands should not reach the water, nor should any water go in my mouth. Then from then on, though you are your Guruji's responsibility, then you don't belong, you cannot have like I want this, I want to do like this, I will only study like this. Nothing works then. It's only your Guruji who decides what he has to do with you. So because it is the end of the hour, we'll stop here, but we'll continue the story on Monday. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Thank you for joining Sai Satcharitra Parayan once again. ओम श्री महागणपते नमः। ओम श्री गुरुदेव दत्त। ओम श्री सच्चिदानंद सद्गुरु साईनाथ महाराज की जय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। दिगंबरा दिगंबरा श्रीपाद वल्लभ दिगंबरा। ओम श्री कृष्ण गुरुनाथ नाथाय श्री गुरुवे नमः। ओम देवी दुर्गाय नमः। ओम श्री कृष्णार्पणमस्तु। कृष्णं वंदे जगद्गुरुम्।